It's the only thing on that thumb drive. But I want to be able to see it here too, right?
No, it's gonna show up on.
I can't see it here while I'm talking. I have to turn around.
Go by the, you have the slides?
Huh?
Actually, you know what, we can put it here too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I just put it on here, and then
And then I'll just follow the, I'll follow the same slide that you do.
yeah. It's only really going to be the first slide, but it just has,
Oh, okay.
and then the rest of it's just my budget. But I mean, it's just the budget as it's printed out by Mark, which is.
I'll just leave it up to that.
Oh yeah, good to see it. What?
There's a lot of slides in it.
No, they're just my budget. I'm not gonna out anything with them. Those are literally just the budget. Like that first one.
Oh, we should get that.
But I'm not up there though.
Oh, no, I haven't,
Hey Mark, can you explain to me why my budget? Why would that be?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, I think so.
Because the expense is shared across all departments based on head count.
The
So,
expense is
yeah.
shared. What's the expense of the IT? It's gonna keep revenue coming in.
Correct, but it gets paid out to support the MMO. So
session that are.
Oh, no, executive session tonight. The what? I didn't hear what he said. Frank? Can you hear me? Okay. Oh, I can't see that far. Press *6 to unmute yourself.
Phone call.
No, that was Karen because I just got on the Zoom. Sorry.
Can you hear me right now? Yeah, we don't want that.
Everybody heard everything you said. I've been having. They're all sitting around the mic. I know. I just logged on and she said she asked me to take it off mute. That's all.
I think it was just to test it, Frank. Hi, it's Mark. If you want to mute, what is it, *6? Yeah, *6 to mute and unmute. So, and the rest of council is in executive session.
Right. I just left there.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Karen.
Yes.
Hey, make sure they mark me present for the
Yes, I will.
executive session.
No, I will.
Say you're present. When did you close your name?
I'm going to do all of it. No, you didn't.
No problem, Jim. No, I can't sign it now. I'll sign it when it passes.
He told me that too.
Going to call this meeting to order. Please rise for the invocation and the pledge of the flag. Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. And please fill our world with peace that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
States of America and to the republic,
one
and
nation, under God,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Ettinger?
Here.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Here.
Mrs. Rose?
Here.
Dr. Ruggles?
Here.
Mrs. Sultana? And Mayor Panto.
Here. Okay, we're gonna have the approval of the agenda. Move to approve. Second. Moved in second. Any additions or deletions? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
And Mr. Brown.
Aye. Action on our minutes of the November 13th meeting. Move
So moved.
Moved and seconded.
Second.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye. Anyone from the public at this time? We have public comment on agenda items only. Anyone in the public would like to address City Council? Seeing none, we'll move on to consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
So we have certificates of appropriateness for the following addresses: 222 Larry Holmes Drive, 44-46 Center Square, 77 North 4th Street, 225 to 29 Ferry Street, 128 North 2nd Street, 22 to 24 Center Square, 428 to 30 Northampton Street, 100 to 116, Northampton Street, 527 to 29 Northampton Street, 25 to 27 South 6th Street.
I move the consent.
Consent and seconded. I'd just like to add that, two of these include fences in the right-of-way, and I want to make sure that the HEC understands that they do not have the authority to approve that. That only comes from City Council for an encroachment agreement. I don't want to get into the same problem we had with Pearly Bakers, where they installed a fence that was in the way of firefighters getting to fight a fire there. But I noticed that the new winery on Center Square and the building up on 500 block of Northampton Street wants to put fences up. And I want to make sure they go through the engineering department first, that this is not an approval to do that. This is approval for this style of fencing they're doing, the design of that fencing, but not to install it.
Is this right?
Yes.
100 is 160.
Mm-hmm.
No, 16.
It's 16, she said. 116.
Okay.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Okay, reports received by council. There's no reports other than the September and October Fire Department report, which is included in your packet. Reports of committees, Finance Committee, Vice Mayor Brown.
No report, Mayor.
Economic Development Committee, Mr. Pinnabone.
Mayor, could you please come back to me?
Sure, no problem, Councilman. Planning and Codes Committee, Councilman Rose.
The only update I have is the next planning commission meeting will be on Wednesday at 6:30 in this room. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
And then we met with the,
Oh, yes. Earlier today, the mayor, administration, and Councilman Pintabone and I met with the developers team of the Wood Avenue warehouse today. We had really productive discussion, and we expect to see them on the January planning agenda.
yeah, it was originally advertised for December, and today they didn't get their HOP permits from the state yet, so they wanted to, they'll probably continue till January.
They also seemed open to a community meeting too, so we'll share those details as they become available.
Point. Public Safety Committee, Reverend Dr. Ruggles.
Just wanted to let council know that the chief told me that the drone is in. We don't got a battery pack for it, but we have the drone. So as soon as we get the battery pack, it'll be flying. But we're all lighted up. That's all I have.
Okay, Public Works Committee, Councilmember Eddinger.
I have no report, Mayor.
And Administration Committee, Councilmember Sultana.
I have no report, Mayor.
Report of the mayor. I just want to mention that the Winter Village is going along well. I want to thank all the employees who worked so hard to get it set up after Bacon Fest. Sunday, we had the Lebanese flag raising. We had the Consul General from New York here, as well as the Honorary Consul General. And we had a very good showing, probably over 100 people there for Lebanese flag raising. The Winter Village will continue this weekend. There's a resolution in your packet concerning the free parking that we always offer every year at the holiday season. I also want to mention that the community center we're working on, hopefully put together a capital campaign committee. We would like to see that community center. I did meet with Father Stan, who owns the St. Anthony's Square last week. I don't think that one's going to be on our agenda. I think we'll either look to 10th and Pine Street probably as our location for the community center. The church doesn't really want to sell it. They want to land lease it, which would require a payment every year by the city. And they also want 55 parking spaces. So I really don't think it's going to work out. We wanted to go to the St. Anthony's Square because it was larger. We could put up a bigger building with maybe 2 gyms instead of 1. But the 55 spaces takes up a lot of that square, so we probably won't do that. But we haven't made a final decision on the location yet. We're still working with the architects. Also, want to let everyone know that the talks are continuing with the Easton Suburban Water Authority. Haven't reported on that in a few months, but I want to let you know that we are meeting with them. And one of our agenda items in the executive session was those lease arrangements. Last night we had the pass, punt, and kick competition between Easton winners and the Phillipsburg winners. Although we did not win, it was our first year in the PP&K, and we're looking to do this annually. This year it was sponsored by the Easton PAL, and we'll be looking forward to getting ready for next year and having our young people, the boys and the girls that competed, practicing. We found out last night that the Phillipsburg teams were practicing. The winners were practicing, the 6 of them. So it was a really good event. We want to extend our well wishes to Chief Scalzo's daughter, who sustained a broken nose during the powder puff competition last night. But it was a really well received night. The stands over Maloney Stadium were full. So we're looking forward to having a Rover win on Thanksgiving Day. Administration Committee, so my report from the administration is that we are working hard. We want to see the Winter Village succeed. We have a lot of businesses. We have all 40 huts that are occupied, so that's a good service. I want to thank Mazin for making sure that they can use their point of sale credit cards. We have all that set up. And I think that's the end of my report. Mr. Shear, your report?
Thank you. There was an executive session earlier, and discussed was personnel, which is the updated status of collective bargaining, and there was also discussion on property rights.
Okay. And Mr. Campos, City Administrator's report.
Mayor, there's a couple items on the agenda that needs council's approval. One of them of which I want to bring to your attention, item J. It's a resolution approving a 48-month lease with Fraser. It's a Fraser partnership plan. I believe that's the printer.
Yes.
Yeah, the printer contract. I do want to let you know that that's a annualized savings. That's an annualized savings of about $11,000. So I just wanted to bring that to council's attention, and then we'll get into the discussion regarding the ARPA budget. I'll be able to explain it to you in a little bit more detail when we get there. But this meets our obligation, which is required by the Treasury Department to note specifically where monies are going to be paid towards. So I'd like to be able to discuss that when we get to that that particular motion.
Absolutely.
That's all I have.
There's no correspondence, so we'll move right into unfinished business, Madam Clerk.
Mayor.
Go ahead. Councilman Pinnabone.
Sorry. Thank you. As you stated, we opened up the Winter Village this week, or this weekend. Last week, I held a second meeting with some of our economic development team regarding a transit loop. We're just in the beginning stages of discussing and assessing our needs and seeing where we can go with it. LSA for Larry Holmes Drive, improvements to Spring Garden Church in Northampton, will be before council at the next meeting. We resubmitted the EPA Justice Grant after our initial application was declined. Primary use was to assist with wastewater to energy facility. And we closed the 2023 Hotel Tax Grant for Space Fest, closed out the 2023 Grow Norco for Centennial Park. Once the financial drawdown request is approved, I'll submit the program report to close it. And lastly, we expect to hear back about 6 to 10 grants over the next month or so.
Okay,
That's
thank
all I
you.
have.
Thank you, Councilman. Now we'll move on to the unfinished business, Madam Clerk.
Bill number 26, an ordinance amending the language in section 285 to 46, special events.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I want to make sure that this isn't in conflict with what my budget presentation was for chapter 285 of the fees. I think it is. So I think we should check on that first. But I don't have a problem with it. I will gladly listen to what is suggested tonight and change the 285, chapter 285 of the ordinances to that. But I wanted to make sure everybody knew that it is different than what the budget presentation was.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Sultana? Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Bill number 27, an ordinance amending the language to Article 10,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
parking regulations.
Motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye. Moving in right into new business, Madam Clerk.
A resolution authorizing DCED to apply for statewide local share accounts in the amount of $375,567.60 to complete Phase 1 of pedestrian safety improvements to Larry Holmes Drive.
Motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. I'd just like to say that, the state just put in a new traffic signal at Third and Larry Holmes Drive to try to make the right-hand turn on red a little bit clearer. It's, 4 different, lights, and it's a blinking yellow that people are supposed to proceed with caution and if there's pedestrians in the roadway. And then there's a solid red, which we never had a solid red arrow. Because living on the south side, I come down, I see a lot of people turning right on red.
Yeah.
And so that should tell them that they can't do that. It should tell them. So I just want to explain that. We're trying to get out on social media some of the, it is only the one of 2 in the entire state that the state has used it so far. Roll call.
Mr. Eddinger,
Aye.
Mayor Panto,
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone,
Aye.
Mrs. Rose.
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles,
Aye.
Mrs. Sultana. And Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Bill number 28, an ordinance authorizing execution of a cable franchise agreement between the City of Easton and Comcast of Southeast Pennsylvania.
Mr. Chair, have you reviewed this?
Well, more important than I reviewed it, because I did initially, we retained a specialized counsel
Cohen.
out of Pittsburgh, and they had reviewed it.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I met with them, members of the Comcast team, a few weeks ago. I would like to table it because I believe that it needs some clarification as to where they're going to do this. My impression when I met with them was that they were going to do the entire city. And I just want to make sure they're going to do the entire city because right now RCN does not service the downtown.
Well, is this being introduced?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I the motion.
All right.
Yeah, and they had a map attached that.
Yeah, the
pretty-
map
Yeah.
shows that the
The
downtown
downtown.
is blacked out.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mayor, can you introduce this?
I can hear, okay,
And then during discussion, when you're gonna vote,
okay,
if we don't have that information, table it.
okay. That's fine.
I made a motion already.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
You moved in second into discussion. Any other discussion?
Mayor,
No, this is to introduce.
Introduce it.
Go ahead, but Councilman Pinnabone.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
as you're aware, I met with Comcast as well last Thursday or Friday, and we spoke specifically about downtown. One thing I asked them was, can they work with us on their installation so we're not closing too many roads down at one time in the same area? They were open to that. The second thing we talked about is the possibility of them partnering with the Marquee whenever they open that up to do it one time and just run the conduit through. So the downtown is, my understanding, to be included as well as the rest of the city. And a basic package I asked for our consumers.
The problem with the
Cable and
downtown though
internet.
is they all agree to do it, but then when they find out it's underground, they have a problem with it and they don't do it. I just want to make sure it's
Okay.
clear that we want the entire city serviced by Comcast, not just College Hill and Southside and Westward.
And the map that is provided in the contract shows that the downtown is overhead, not underground. So, from Comcast, so.
Well, they did state that some of the, there's going to be 10% or 15%, Mayor, if you remember, underground, and the rest is going to be above ground throughout the city.
Oh, citywide probably, yeah.
We'll
But the
have-
entire downtown is underground.
They've agreed to come in and present, so we'll make sure we have them here.
That would be helpful.
Okay, well, it's only introduced right there. Well, if we resolve it in 2 weeks, fine. If not, we'll table it.
A resolution approving.
Well-
Sorry.
Go ahead, Councilman.
No, I'm good.
This does not affect the budget because the 2 companies will be sharing, the 3 companies will be sharing customers. We're not getting any additional customers. So the amount of money we get from the 5% gross revenues should be, I think that should be clarified too. It says 5% of gross revenues, but sometimes some of them are not giving us the 5% on pay-per-view and
You'd need to look carefully, because I had looked at all our contracts, and the key is how the 5% is defined as to
Exactly.
what's included. So we may need just more of an explanation from the Cohen law firm, who does understand that. And my impression was that they were able to potentially expand it or better define it to make sure it's all inclusive. We are going to, just so everyone knows, we're going to have follow-up hearings with Service Electric and with RCN. I mean, I don't know if they know that yet, but those contracts are all expired, and they're just operating on whatever their last deal was. But the process, as I'm being educated by the Cohen law firm, is that for a new franchise like this, council just goes ahead and votes. For renewals, there has to be a public meeting first, and then you go ahead with a renegotiated agreement. And one of our part of our contract with the Cohen firm is they're coordinating all three of these, which is a tremendous benefit to us.
Sounds good.
Joel, when did the other two expire?
Well, I'd have a while ago. It doesn't. For as far as RCN, we're getting the 5% apparently from both of them, which seems to be the standard rate. So, but it was a while ago.
If you don't mind me asking, Lewis, how did we miss that?
I mean, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I mean, we have a lot of contracts, Frank, but not having an expired lease does not change the other terms in the lease as it was explained to us with the Cohen law firm. So we will be updating those leases. I can let you know specifically when we have those. Look, all contracts that come into the city go to council, and they're all recorded in the clerk's office. So unless we have a particular system that identifies when a contract is going to be expired, it's really done by memory right now, which is not a good practice. So it's something that we should visit formally and look to upgrade our system.
Well,
in the clerk's office.
Yeah, excuse me, and don't mean to interrupt, but part of our discussions with the Cohen law firm and the proposal is that the goal is going to be that all three of these are going to expire and run to the same term. So, and as far as the old contracts go, and the explanation, because, I mean, I discovered this when I asked to look at the other contracts because of the Comcast contract, and it's like, the cable companies weren't worried about us terminating them. I mean, they should have had the same concern about extending their own contracts. I think they were comfortable where they were, and the city was getting its percentage, so there was no trigger to start questioning.
Most of the terms are.
And we can't negotiate above the 5%.
I was just going to say it's state law. Most of it.
It's federal law.
Oh, it's federal law. Yeah.
It's federal, and guess what? Our lobbying group isn't particularly strong in the Federal Communications Commission.
Right. Well, as I understand, and we didn't really have a position to play, it still is worrisome that the contracts are expiring and we're not knowing about it. So, Lewis, I definitely would like to see if you or the administration can present something in the near future on a way to simplify this and prevent this to not from happening again with any other contracts.
Okay.
Okay.
Problem. Moving on.
A resolution approving the appointment of Patrick Caldwell to the Easton Area Joint Sewer Authority.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second discussion. Roll call.
Mayor Panto.
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone.
Aye.
Mrs. Rose.
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles.
Aye.
Mrs. Sultana.
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger.
Aye.
A resolution approving free parking in the parking garages only during the 2024 holiday season.
Moved.
Moved in second discussion.
Mayor, do we happen to have a roundabout figure on loss of revenue for those days not collecting parking? I'm not opposed to it. I was just wondering if we had that.
Not until people use it, we won't know. We'll know this year because we're giving them 3 hours of free parking. and it's not at the street meters.
Well, a little different this year than it has been in past years.
Yeah,
In,
it
pa- in
Depends
past,
on how you define loss of revenue, because we didn't have revenue from the meters
Last-
in the
no.
streets last year,
right.
which we will have this year, so we
We-
may gain revenue.
Well, I mean, to answer Mr.
Okay, that's good.
To answer Mr. Pinnabone's question specifically, in past years, we didn't have the system that we have today. So in past years, we would just have a moratorium on payments. So we would figure that into our budget. This year, it's different, because this year we have the capability of doing it per transaction. So we limit it to 3 hours per transaction. You could change that if you want. That was just a recommendation from the.
And the
from-
system allow that report to come anyway.
You could change that, but now, as you could change that if you wanted to, council. But now it's a 3 hour per daily use. So if you do stay there longer than 3 hours, you would pay the difference. Well, whatever you paid over 3 hours.
And going forward, this will allow council to be able to distinguish one year from the next.
Quick question.
Go ahead.
Right.
It says the garages.
Yeah, I'm not-
Do we incorporate the parking meters in the 4th Street garage in that?
No, and it says the upper levels, and we're advertising it that way as well.
Okay.
Roll call.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Since we don't have any documentation to base the decision on, I'll just see how it goes this year. Thank you.
Mr. Pinnabone,
Aye.
Mrs. Rose,
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles,
Aye.
Ms. Sultana,
Aye.
Mr. Brown,
Aye.
Mr. Eddinger,
Aye.
Mayor Panto.
Aye.
Mayor, this really goes back to matters, but something I just want to let council and the public know as far as the cable contracts go. This 5%, the commission, just so everyone understands, works the exact same way that our new tariff system is going to work. We're not getting 5% from the cable companies. They get added on. When you pay your service electric or RCM bill, these are all added ons. So it's the public, whatever we're negotiating for, is coming out of the public's decision to use cable versus any other way that they could get content without paying for it.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. But we all see our cable bills.
A resolution approving the 2025 non-union and management benefits package.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second, discussion. Go, Dr. Ruggles.
I had a couple of questions here. If we go to, vacation and sick leave, item number 3, page 1. The third bullet item there, on all the rest of them, it says, when it talks about days, it says vacation days or sick days or whatever. It just says a maximum of 30 days is allowed to be accrued. Is that combination of, or what days is that? Is that vacation days? Is that sick days? Is that what days?
Could you tell us what page you're on? We're scrolling through this. What page one?
Page 1, bottom of the page.
Yeah.
It's at bottom. It's both of them.
That's the section for those hired after January 1, 2013. It was a page 1. It was the last item on. Oh, you mean on the overall thing? It's page 86. 86 of 119.
The 30 days refers to the vacation, and then the other days refer to sick.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Accrued vacation days and accrued sick days.
It's altogether 30 days, right?
No,
Two separate things.
sick days are accrued separately and paid for at the end of a person's before they retire as terminal leave, and vacation days are paid as well. But sick days you get paid 1 for 3.
Thank you.
Dr. Ruggles, that should be cleared. That should be we didn't make a change to this, but that could be cleared up for sure. It's vacation day. sick,
Are you sure? Because
sick time you're allowed to accrue as much as you want.
yeah,
Up to 300. Well, yeah.
Well,
no, no, no.
but
You actually do more. You get paid up to 300.
yeah, but
Terminal pay, you only, it's up to 300.
I don't read it that way. That third bullet only has to do with how much you could carry over per year on a carryover basis. And it only makes sense if the 30 days was a combination of sick and vacation, because on the dot one, you could only get 12 sick days per annum. On the dot two, you could get 15 to 20 per annum. So if you're not going to get the 30 days with a 12-day max and a 15 to 20-day max unless it's both.
No, it's not. Because I know our practice. It's because you can carry over days off from year to year, and what they're saying, what we're saying is that the max is that you can carry over is 30. Well, we'll have to look at this and we could table it. We have time, and we can make this change.
Okay.
It doesn't need to be approved until before we can do this at the
January
next
1.
meeting. Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll table that. I'll move to table that resolution until the next meeting.
So moved.
Yeah.
Second.
Moved in second.
We have a resolution approving a third handicap sign at 226 Palmer Street.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say I did talk to the person living in the dwelling there, and I told him what to do. So we get to this point, I said that he listened and is on the unit.
Good. We had another person in from 200 block of Palmer Street who was complaining about our sidewalks. It's in one of the four remaining that the city actually owns. We are the landlords, so we're checking on that as well.
On Palmer Street?
Yeah. Mrs. Sos.
Oh, Mrs. Sos, okay.
Okay, moving on.
So we'll take a vote. Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
A resolution approving the proposal from Mr. Rehab for $65,010 to line storm pipes.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Moved in second. Discussion. Roll call.
Mrs. Altana?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
And Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
A resolution approving a contract with Synagro Central LLC for hauling and disposal of sludge.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
And Mrs. Sultana?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, I'd really like to look into the bidding process. I think the state should give us credit. This sludge is being taken all the way to Bethlehem, and I'm just wondering if that added cost to the bid. And when we have a local, Strin has had this contract for a long time. They took all of our sludge from the wastewater plant, and I just don't know how much of that $91 a ton is based on driving all the way to Bethlehem. I don't know, but if the other bids came in like Waste Management up in Penarville at $92, is it really cheaper?
Yeah, Mr. Hopkins has discussed this. I just don't recall where any of that is. We need to have a meeting between ourselves and Mr. Hopkins to understand exactly what the bidding is, because we definitely, Dave and I have definitely talked about that particular aspect. I don't know if we had much choice when it comes to the bidding. I think part of the factor was we wouldn't get competitive bids. Working within the bids we're getting is factoring in the travel pod.
So yeah, we bid it like within 25 miles or something.
Well, it somewhere along the line it was factored in, I think, and the question is whether we could get competitive bidding because of the problem with where you
That's my point.
dispose of it. But I don't know where our resolution is.
All right,
But we'd have to talk about it with the person who understands this.
sounds good.
For introduction, we have Bill number 29, an ordinance updating the spelling of Phillip Street.
So introduced. And could I just add on that? I did have an opportunity to speak to each of the neighbors last Saturday. Either they call me Saturday or I talk to them, either they call me Saturday and Sunday, and their feeling is that just keep it the same. There's no difference to them. They used to it at this point.
They would rather have the two L's.
Yeah.
Okay, roll call.
No,
Oh, I'm just introduced. Resolution.
Resolution approving a 48-month lease with Fraser Partnership Plan for printers and supplies.
Move. Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Eddinger?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
And Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Our last resolution is a resolution authorizing the mayor and city administrator to revise the ARPA budget as needed.
Move.
Second.
Discussion. I think we better talk about this because I know what we need to do. We need to commit our funds by the end of the year, according to the Department of Treasury. But I don't like the way it. Well, maybe it's not the resolution that I have a problem with. It's the wording of the giving us the power to change it. We don't have that power. That's only city council. We have to present a budget to city council for how we're spending the ARPA money, and the city council approves it. And we should not be allowed to revise the budget as needed. I realize that the resolution itself doesn't say that, and that's very important. But I just want to make sure that we understand it. We're not revising the budget. We're not allowed to revise the budget.
You submitted that earlier on, didn't you?
Yeah, we have the administration, Mr. Kingsley, Mr. Campos, and myself, and Mr. Lizinecki. We're going to meet. We got to meet within the next week to discuss the ARPA budget and any funds that are not being used and where we could put them to be used by the end of the year. So we will have that to city council by the next meeting. But
Mayor, so, this is step one. Step two would be when we finalize the budget, because some of the money that's coming from ARPA, for example, the allocations to GEDP, if you note that the allocation is $500,000, well, 250,000 of which is already budgeted for next year in the 101 budget, in the general fund budget. This ARPA money would then cover that payment from the 101 budget. All right. So that money that's in GDP's budget would have to be allocated somewhere else. And when we come back here at our next budget hearing, not tonight, but when we're starting to finalize it and we present to you the changes, the itemized list, there are going to be items that would have been on the ARPA budget, but now are going to be coming out of the 101 budget.
So you put them in a general then? They're going to come out ARPA?
Yes, they're going to come out of the general fund.
Okay.
For the ARPA budget, it's very clear that we were going to use, well, 500,000. So 250,000 would be for 24, approximately. And I have to again look at the budget, and I'll be able to explain it to you at the next budget session. But generally speaking, 250,000 was going to come out of ARPA to support GDP, as opposed to coming out of a 101.
Gotcha.
And then those monies that were going to be used in ARPA before we put this budget together for capital projects are now going to come out of 101. We're going to itemize those for you at the next meeting. So you'll be able to see that. To your question, Mayor, because it's not going to be that open-ended. Am I correct? Okay.
okay,
Right.
moving on.
No.
Roll call. Yeah.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Eddinger?
Aye.
Okay, at this point, we're at the point in our budget, our agenda where public comment on any agenda or any non-agenda item, any item at all that's on your mind, that you want to talk to city council about, that deals with the city of Easton. Come on up, Artie.
First of all, I want to congratulate the city council if you can negotiate this cable franchise agreement, you'll be saving $100,000 for every citizen, for the citizens of Easton. Hats off. Hope my hat is already off. Sorry. Second thing is, as the city knows about the construction guys parking over here on the railroad property, has there any agreement been done that? Or?
That's not city owned. It's owned by the Greater Eastern Development Partnership.
Oh,
It's not owned by the city.
I thought it was owned by the railroad.
No, they sold it to the Greater Eastern Development Partnership.
Wow. Guess there's no chance grabbing it from them and making another parking area. No.
No.
Okay. I gave earlier in the week. I gave Karen some letters I typed up relating to a guy who parks his car across the street from his handicapped spot, which he tends to leave open 3-4 days a week and doesn't park there, but in fact calls the cops to arrest the people parking on that empty space because it's a handicapped spot, but it's difficult for everyone doesn't know that it's his handicapped space. I think that should be investigated, I think, by either Lewis or
We did,
Lewis. Hello, you're not paying attention.
Mr. Ravitz, I did forward that
Okay,
to
thank you. I
the health
appreciate that.
officer.
Thank you very much. That's something I think council should consider because this guy's taking advantage. First of all, he's not paying his daily parking because he has a sticker. The second thing is he's cheating the city. I don't like that.
Well, they changed that before I got in office. It used to be that the handicap spot that's given to you is not given to you personally. It's just marked as a handicap spot, assuming that nobody's going to park in that spot except for the person who lives in that house. But now they're actually put the permit number on it.
Yeah,
and
right. I saw his permit number on it.
And it can't be grandfathered over to another person either.
I understand that, but the problem is he's parking across the street 4 or 5
open.
days a week,
He's
and
setting somebody up.
city's losing money, and that's what's bothering me. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ravitz.
Hey, Mayor,
Yes, Councilman.
can we get Mr. Ravitz a police escort home?
Mr. Ravitz is loved by many, so I don't think he needs it.
He's sitting by the chief, Mr. Penamone.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll call for adjournment.
I just have one item I wanted to bring up while everyone's here, and I spoke with Mayor Panto earlier. I just wanted to see if we could request that all the directors get their resolutions to Karen by Thursday, because this is not the first time we got the packet very late, and I wish I didn't have a full-time job on top of this. So it's not really enough time to look over the packet. If there were questions, we'd be tabling a lot of things tonight. So I was just hoping that we could stick to that schedule. Understandable if an emergency comes up and we have to stick something in last minute, but it's also, I don't think it's fair to Karen too to be working over the weekend if she doesn't have to.
Okay.
I agree. I spoke to Crystal about that yesterday and today. Over 119 pages, I think. It was really hard to get through it yesterday and today with other city obligations, work, and preparing for the budget hearing.
Okay, thank you very much, council members. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Moved in second, discussion, roll call.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Okay, this time we're going to move in right into a budget hearing on police and fire.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening. No.
This is actually one of my easier budget presentations. This is my 17th budget presentation, believe it or not. And this year, because of EIT, the numbers look really good. Just to talk a little bit about the department and where we are as we move forward and head into next year from a budgetary standpoint. Still a 63-man department is where we're slated. We're actually slated for 64 in a temporary capacity to hire for individuals that may be leaving. We are hitting a period of time. The way departments run, both police and fire, very often what you'll see is rises in hiring and then lulls in hiring. And unfortunately, the reason that happens is for any number of circumstance. But when it does happen that way, you find a lot of people retiring at the same time. And and then you go for a long period of time where nobody does. So we're heading into a period now where, we're carrying a few vacancies and trying to fill those, with the academy classes coming up, and also we're looking, to potentially some retirements next year. So we're trying to figure that all out and how it pertains to the budget. We're still budgeting for 63 officers and hope to have, the vacancies that we have, currently filled by that time. But that's just one of the challenges that we have right now. And again, it does affect the budget as we move forward, just because of the unknown. We've also done a lot with the grant work, and I know Dr. Ruggles touched on it. We have multiple grants that we've been kind of working through, and the department does a lot with our grant funding. The LiDAR and evidence collection and certification through the LiDAR system that we purchased is absolutely second to none. It is arguably one of the best means of collecting evidence available to any law enforcement agency in the country. So we're very fortunate to have that, and would not have had it if not for the grant that we were able to obtain. And also, we have multiple units. One is a terrestrial, which is a mounted, a tripod-mounted unit, and then we also have an aerial unit that, like we said, once the drone batteries come in, we'll have that thing up and flying, and we'll be able to use that not only for evidence collection, but I know there's a lot of things that the city would potentially be able to use them for, as far as mapping the city with the LiDAR and getting accurate engineering reports from things like that as well. So we're excited to get that going as well. But again, just to speak to the grants and the things that we've been able to obtain. And finally, one of the major initiatives for next year, as I move into next year, our budget, as you'll see here in a minute, has held pretty much flat, and if not anything, gone down in some respects. But one of the major things we're trying to accomplish is the purchase, the acquisition of a new evidence storage facility for our bulk evidence. We're trying to move out of the 500 complex due to flooding and some other issues that we have down there. And so we're working with the mayor, with Lewis and the administration to try to identify a land. It's very hard to find land in the city that's not in the 500-year floodplain. I don't even know that there's any, but we're trying to accomplish that, or try to figure out.
My house is not in the 500 foot.
We can put it in your yard. So we're trying
Already has water there.
Yeah, so we're trying to find that. We've already got grants. Believe it or not, we've already got grants for the project, but there are stipulations as it pertains to where we build and what we're going to build. And it's not a heavy lift as far as what we're looking. We're looking for some sort of pole type building where we can basically secure all of our bulk evidence and some of the other equipment that we would need and keep into a secure environment. So we're working on that, and that's probably the largest initiative that we have at this time. We currently have in for the 2 hybrid vehicles. Again, from a budgetary standpoint, those vehicles have already been purchased. It's just a matter of getting them in the fleet now, and then obviously seeing the impact they have, not only the cost of the vehicles, but also from the operation, which I'm pretty optimistic that because of the level of idling that we do in law enforcement generally, that an electric hybrid type vehicle, the type of vehicles that we purchase are going to be actually really cost effective, but also perfect for what we need in law enforcement. So we'll be able to kind of report on that once we get it. So what I passed out to everybody, I had it in front of all of you. Obviously, there's the budget that gets put out every year. That's basically our line items that show what the final line items in every line item, or the final amounts in every line item are. I actually presented to you what I do every year and how I break down each one of those line items. Before I get into those and we go through, if you have any questions in reference to each of those line items, the proposed budget this year, as far as our general police fund, we have 2. We have police, then I have traffic. I break those 2 things out separately because they are essentially 2 separate initiatives. So the general police budget actually dropped by 5.84%, and that number to me is phenomenal. That's $800-some thousand. However, the reason that dropped predominantly, as far as when I did the analysis of our budget, was because of the non-resident EIT. That goes away this year, and because of that, and I'd be lying if I said I fully understand how our budget goes down because the EIT goes away, and Mark tried to explain it to me, and I'm not going to try to explain it to him. I'm sure maybe you guys understand it better than I do, but because I guess it's spread out amongst all the departments, the liability, the MMO liability, it ultimately dropped our budget by about $805,000. So whenever you're looking at a budget, there's 2 major components, obviously salaries and benefits, which I really don't have any control over. It just really comes down to numbers, it comes down to contracts, and it comes down to how that all plays out in any given year. So what I try to do is break my budget out. When you look at the budget document I put in front of you, anything you see in purple, that falls into that category of, benefits and salary. And so those are typically filled in by the administration.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes, Councilman Bittabone.
Mayor, I'm sorry. Can somebody switch my page? I'm on the 2025 Police Department expense budget page.
He doesn't have the,
Yeah, that's I'm not going through that yet, Councilman. I'm still on the one that just shows, I'm starting to go through that now. I haven't gone through line by line or anything like that yet. So I'm just talking here.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So, so you'll see anything in purple. And there's actually, you're not gonna see, Councilman, I actually gave a handout here, so, that has the budget, so that's what they're looking at in front of them. That's not on my presentation, but, once I get through this, we'll go through the actual line items that are presented to the city generally, but they don't have the breakdown the way I'm talking about them now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So anyway, so I break it out, and I have a second operating budget that I kind of look at, and that's the one that's really important to me because that's the one that tells me where I fall as far as what I'm doing and the things that I need to get the job done. And I try every year to hold that number as flat as I can, if not reduce it, to try to work with the city in an effort to cut budget. And this year we actually had an increase of 0.32%, which is about $3,000. So it's essentially flat. And that number is actually deceiving because of some of the things that were reported there. One of them is an increase in our CDBG request, which is this year $30,000. I don't know that we get that number. That kind of comes down the road here. Last year it was $20,000, so that $10,000 was an increase in my operating budget. So if you took that $10,000, and that's an in and an out. So if we get CDBG funding, obviously anything we spend there, we get reimbursed through the CDBG grant. So it's really a non-effect, but it still registers that way. But and one of the other major, or one of the other larger increases was just because next year, for the first time in 4 years, we're going to have the Lafayette Lehigh back here, and we'll have it here for 2 years because of some kind of, I think, bicentennial.
It was 2026.
2026. So they'll have it 25 and 26 now. So, and I don't intend on letting them tear down a goalpost, so I'm not sure what's going on. I don't know. So
They did that for the 100th game that they played in Yankee Stadium?
yeah.
It really messed up the schedule then, too.
Yeah, well, that's why we haven't. Well, no, that was actually a while ago. This was COVID, so it was Lehigh, COVID, Lehigh. Then they switched to Lehigh again.
Right.
So this is the first game in the last. This will be the 5 years once we play it here. So there was a small increase in our funding to basically cover that game, and that is a reimbursable event as well. So those are the two major ones as far as that. Now I don't know if you wanted to take a look. If you want to just go through the budget, you can go to the next slide from Mazin, so Councilman Bittabone can see at least the. And as you look at the document I have in front of you, most of the line items that you'll see have been reduced. So we tried really hard this year to try to figure out. We've been very fortunate and very blessed as a department. We have what we need to do the job. Obviously, we wishes, dreams, those types of things. But when it comes to the facility, when it comes to the fleet, when it comes to equipment and training, we really have what we need to do the job. And we always are trying to figure out more cost-effective ways to do that. So when you look at the line items as it pertains to the budget, I believe just about every line item except for the few I mentioned have been reduced or held flat based on last year's budget. So without going through every single line item, I don't know if you wanted to look and see anything you see on the far right at the plus minus, anything you see there in red would show an increase, anything you see in green would show a decrease, and the ones that are yellow are the ones that I consider my operating budget, and the ones in purple are the ones that are considered salary and benefits.
Any questions for the chief? Any questions for Mark or Louis? Mr. Rabbits.
We have a secure facility at the 500 complex. So that's not our evidence per se. We have an evidence facility inside our police facility. So, and that's a secure facility that we keep 90% of the evidence. However, when we get larger pieces of evidence, vehicles, things, or things that are held for like forever, like homicide evidence, things like that, storing that for long periods of time, or because of the size, we have facilities that we have right now at 500, although that's in a floodplain, and the Bushkill Creek floods very quickly. And so we had an incident going back several years ago where that flooded. And so we're trying to get out of that location to get to a more secure location. And also, I believe there's better uses for the facility that we're using down there when it pertains to public works to get some of their vehicles, which are expensive, out of the weather and things like that, that they could take back some of their locations. So, yep.
Mayor, I have a question.
Go ahead, Councilman Pinavone.
Mayor, are you asking for questions just from this slide or overall?
Well, we're asking any questions of the chief of police.
Yeah. So, Chief, I brought this up, I don't know, one or two budget hearings ago, and I was advised to bring it up today. I'm still concerned with quality of life issues, mainly parking. During the week, we do what we can, but I really don't think we have enough parking enforcement outside of downtown in the neighborhoods. And then on the weekends, we have nothing in the neighborhoods. I'm getting calls weekly of the tickets people are parked. I've heard from residents, met with Dave Hopkins. We put new bright no parking signs, but the city knows, the residents know, unfortunately, and the visitors, that we don't enforce after 5 p.m. in the neighborhoods or on the weekends outside of the downtown. I don't know what the answer is. I don't want to put an extra burden on our police officers, but I often watch our officers drive by no parking signs, and I got 5 cars parked there. Can our officers issue some tickets? Is there a way that we can look at increasing parking enforcement? Is there anything we can do? It's the parking. It's the parking on the corners. We're having accidents all over the city. We're getting complaints from College Hill, downtown, West Ward, South Side, College Hill primarily. Cars parking on the corners, cars can't see going out, and we're having issues. What can we do with some of these quality of life issues and enforcing them?
Sure. Parking has always been a challenge here in the city. I mean, obviously, that's not a secret, I think, to anybody here. We're actually the only major city that runs parking that isn't through an authority. And so it's just a little bit different how we approach it. So it's not necessarily accurate that we don't have any enforcement in the weekends. And, you know, as far as anything major, the one recommendation I always have is for anything that needs immediate attention, as far as parking violations go, is to have, obviously, residents call us, let us know, and then, yes, obviously we'll respond and assess the situation. But I will say that we use extreme, and I use this word a lot when I speak to the mayor and the administration, we use extreme discretion when we try to manage parking here in the city. The city wasn't built, I don't believe, for homes with, houses that are multiple family homes, let alone multiple vehicles in each family. And I think because of that, what we find in a lot of our communities is just the parking is so scarce and so challenging, and it's something that we really haven't addressed as a city as far as where do all these cars go. I could write, if I walked outside now, thousands of tickets. I could walk down the streets and write thousands, and we've had moments where we've had to do those things. So we do use a lot of discretion, and we typically try to enforce when they are things like park close to the corner that create dangerous situations. And then we address them when they're quality of life. And a lot of times when we get complaints and we do write tickets, we also find ourselves in positions where whatever somebody's complaining on their neighbor or whatever it is, saying this guy's parked here illegally, whatever it is, you could look around and write 30 or 40 more tickets. And I'm not saying that we don't enforce or shouldn't enforce, but it is something as a law enforcement agency, or even myself as a law enforcement professional, I try to manage the quality of life of people living in these communities where parking is so scarce, with the public safety that goes along with it. All that said, I'm certainly open to sit and talk about putting more parking enforcement officers on to have them patrol various neighborhoods, including College Hill. We do spend a lot of time in all of these neighborhoods, and we do write a lot of tickets, as I think some of the numbers that I put before you will show. It's just a matter of trying to figure out exactly how to balance the quality of life issues with the no parking, with the quality of life issues with not having parking. And so it's a challenge for anybody, I promise you, trying to face it. It's one that I haven't been able to necessarily completely be successful at navigating. But all that said, it's not for lack of trying. And so to sit down and maybe we have that conversation of what the right number looks like for parking enforcement, and and what we can do to make sure we're hitting those areas. And again, the safety stuff is big. And College Hill, I do know that we're up there frequently, and we do right corner parking because that is one where you can't get off the side streets. But it's one again that we're constantly trying to figure out and manage.
Chief, back when Lafayette was building that residence hall up there, they said that they would supply us with a parking enforcement officer.
We are doing that. We have
Yeah,
one.
so I'm just saying that there is one that is supplied by the college for that area.
And we report hours, and so there's certain obligations that we have with all of that as well. So the best way to get resolution to any single quality of life is to have them call the non-emergency number and report whatever that quality of life issue is, because then that does put an officer right on it. And again, but that's a conversation as to what that initiative is going to look like if that's how we want to move forward. If there are, I haven't gotten those complaints, and so as you're getting them, I know you send me you send me when you usually get stuff. So when you get those types of complaints, even if it's just as a heads up, just so I kind of know where the issues or where people are complaining. But parking is certainly it's a top priority, and it certainly is something that we deal with a lot as far as the things that do come into us. But so I know that's probably.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it, Chief, and I appreciate discretion.
Yeah.
I absolutely don't want you guys getting ticket happy on our residents. I haven't been bringing them to you lately because I've been taking them to Mr. Hopkins just to see if there's something we can do on the city side to try to prevent as opposed to just ticketing. The thought was painting yellow lines on the corners. Last week I was up by March Elementary School in College Hill. All four corners, they're parking past the white crossing lines, and it's hard to see. Dave feels, and I don't disagree with him, the issue with the painted lines is still the enforcement on it. So I appreciate you guys using discretion and not just getting ticket crazy, but if we could sit down, or you and the administration could sit down and maybe come up with a way to, especially the troublesome intersections, 10th and Ferry, Monroe, and I forgot over there by March Elementary, I apologize, on South Side off a line. I think that would be great. Thank you for your attention to it.
No worries at all. Yeah, we'll sit down and we can have a conversation in reference to all of that. And we do that. We work with Dave as well. We just recently had one where if there is an issue, and we can take a look at it. Now, the corner one's easy, but we had one where individuals were parking on the sidewalk and in an area that was kind of a weird situation. So we did mark that up better. So now we can enforce it and ensure that everybody at least has a fair opportunity to know they shouldn't be parking there. And so we work with him to do that as well. And I think that's a good resolution to specific issues. But the corners are tricky ones that I always try to make sure we're hitting, because I do think those fall more into the safety category than the nuisance category, because again, we want to make sure cars can get out to intersections safely without having accidents occur.
Chief, I'd like to ask a question about speeding. Now, I understand we don't have radar. Yeah. Myself and the mayor were just on a PML legislative committee last week, phone call, where I mentioned to the group about radar. It seems to be obviously consensus throughout the state, not meaning we're going to get it. What is our deterrent now? I mean, can we pull people over because our police officers know they're going too fast, or not really, because without the radar we'll get beat in court? What are we doing to try to curtail speeding? What can we do?
Yeah, well, obviously stopping anybody, you have to obviously see some violation that would give you the probable cause and the reasonable suspicion to make that stop. And so just saying that we think someone's going fast enough, even if it is blatantly obvious, still wouldn't be enough for us to warrant stopping, unless they were driving recklessly or negligently, something to that effect. But just somebody driving down the road and saying, I think they're going over 40, and stopping somebody, now that's going to get us in a whole lot of trouble, obviously. So that's not something we can do. But the way that we do enforce here in the city is twofold. We have VASCAR and we have what they call AccuTrack, and they're two separate systems. Now, the problem with those two systems is that they're difficult to utilize in a city environment because they require space. There's certain regulations when you use those systems. You have to be so close to or so far away from changes in speed. You have to be you need so much room to allow for the actual system to operate, and then you have to have somebody man the system itself. So it's possible. I'm not saying that it's not, but it is challenging just because it's hard to set up in an area where you wouldn't be seen as far as someone driving down the road saying, obviously there's police officers there waiting for us. or it's difficult to set up because most of our roads have vehicles parked on it, and it requires these systems. It's either we use stopwatches with white lines on the road, which have to be painted and calibrated, and those types of things, or we use a device that actually works a lot like radar, but that's a system that goes and gets put out, and you have to have an officer stay with it, and then somebody like a chase car make the stop down the road. So those are the two things that we do, and we do utilize those in the city, and we actually do use signboards. And believe it or not, when we do put out the signboards, most of the time we find that cars are not going to the extent or to the speed. So quantity and quality as far as the speed and the amount of speeders that I think people think. I think 25 miles an hour looks really fast, and 35 looks really fast in a city environment. And so I think people automatically jump to these people are flying. And the times that we've put it out, we haven't really found that. We found that there are individual cars, but it hasn't necessarily been as epidemic as I think people would think. Now, again, I'm not talking speed as it pertains to like safety on the road. So some roads, even 25, I think, can create, like Lafayette Street's the perfect example coming around the corner. Even at the speed limit coming around that corner, because of the short sight distance there, becomes very challenging as well. And we struggle with areas like that too, trying to get stoplights and different types of traffic control devices, only because PennDOT's requirements to get it. You have to have so many accidents, and you have to do traffic studies and those things. It's very challenging, to say the least.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it.
No, you got
Go
it.
Rovers.
Any other questions on the initial? Mhm. On Lafayette Street? Mhm.
Chief, can you just repeat the question? Because I think people
sure.
on,
It's from Artie Rabbits. He's
Thank you,
asking about large trucks on College Hill coming up College Avenue. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. That's coming from a lot of the warehouses out in the townships, and that passageway, the trucks are allowed to come down through Cattell Street. Those are state roads, and they'll actually take them down Lafayette Street to 611. So. Yeah, the tractor trailer traffic through the communities right now is becoming more extreme for sure, which, obviously everything takes a toll, the roads and everything takes a toll. But most truckers I find try to stay away from the cities and they try to stay out of in here. But I would assume in the mornings you are probably seeing trucks making their way either down here to get to 22 or down to 611.
Mayor, we spoke about it today in the meeting with the warehouse. Is it appropriate to start now and trying to identify roads throughout the city that we can make truck routes or prohibit trucks from going through, or is it too premature at this moment to do
No,
it
it's not
through a
premature.
whole
We've been
city?
talking about this for 6 months, truck routes. They do it very effectively out in Palmer Township, but they also patrol it. And we can't enforce it on state roads. So all of our major roads like Northampton Street, Wood Avenue, 13th Street, Cattell Street, Berwick Street, Line Street are state roads. And so we're looking at the city as a whole to see where we can put truck routes and force trucks to use the roads that we want them to use, not the roads that they want to use.
Thank you.
Well, I don't have the final numbers. Oh, I'm sorry. The question would be, what are the crime stats looking like as far as generally here within the city? And year over year, I want to say the numbers that stick out to me as far as going back about 10 years, our violent crime Part 1 UCR stuff has obviously trended way down from 1,100 or so 10 years ago down to just over 300 now. So the city is doing phenomenally well when it comes to crime. I don't have the final stats as far as this year, and I don't even necessarily want to guess, but as of today, I'm pretty confident that we're going to see that trend continue. Things still look really good here in the city, and the officers do a great job in making sure that happens.
Chief, another question, if I may. We have 63 officers currently?
We have 61 officers currently. We have, I'm sorry, 62.
61.
62. 62.
62.
Yes.
Chief, my question is to you or the mayor or Lewis. We have 62, and obviously we're doing a decent job. Crime is down and so on. You guys are doing a really good job. I don't even want to say decent. From where we came from to where we are, you guys deserve all the accolades that we can offer. My question is, from your professional opinion, you know, with the development just on the books in downtown and the 100+ units that we're looking on South Side, plus the RDA, do you feel we have adequate amount of officers for an extra maybe 1,000+ people over the next 2-3 years?
I think that obviously as you continue to increase population and not just the number of people, because it does come down a lot to, you know, what you're seeing as far as who's moving in, the types of buildings that are being built and those types of things. But also a lot of that goes along with it. I do think the conversation is going to have to be had, and we've talked about this a little bit as far as where our numbers are and where our numbers should be. And there's different ways to look at that. But one of the things we're talking about now with the parking and things like that, I mean, it really comes down to call volume, types of calls that you're seeing. It comes down to crime that you're seeing in the city. But overall, the biggest issue that you'll find is going to be quality of life stuff that you're bringing up. Having more officers affords us the ability to put an officer dedicated to a neighborhood dealing with parking or whatever the issue is, to have units that can respond to quality of life issues as they arise and be more flexible when it comes to dealing with those situations. So I do think as more people come down, I think the expectation is higher for the city of Easton right now. I think people come here and they have an expectation of what their quality of life is going to be, which is very different than it was when I started back in '99. The city has definitely grown in a very positive and a great way, and I do think the conversation is going to have to be had as to meeting the expectations of the citizens who are moving into our community and what they're hoping to see. And I think that's part of what you're seeing now. I think when I started, people were less worried about parking and more worried about safety, and now I think people are looking more towards all of the other things that really do matter to people. Because the safety, I think they feel is there, and I think now it's trying to get some of these other things, the smaller quality of life issues that matter so much, taken care of. So, to answer your question, I wouldn't be able to say, yeah, we need this many people, but I do think with the numbers and the growth that a conversation would probably have to be had as to where we see the department moving in the future and maybe plan for that accordingly so that it can get budgeted and things like that as we move forward.
I think also, since you,
Thank you.
Mr. Pinnabone, you asked me as well for my opinion. If you look at the city as a whole, and I think you hit the nail on the head, and so did the chief, you talked about quality of life, and looking at the big picture, this is something that we would have to, first of all, with the increase, if there's an increase in population, there should be a commensurate increase also in some of our revenue line items, which will allow us then to also to make sure that the city's keeping pace with the services that it needs to provide. And keeping pace means that making sure that we have the human capital. And it's always a delicate balance between making sure that, we're able to meet services to a certain level without having to exceed revenue from an expense standpoint. But a lot of the things that I think you had mentioned also cross into parking enforcement officer duties, code inspectors, so forth and so on.
All the service departments
So
want to be
forth,
affected.
yeah, so forth and so on. And I think that this is a topic that we have to continue to discuss. Ultimately, if council ever asks me for my opinion on fire and police specifically, I will lean on the operational expertise of obviously the both chiefs, and then from there, being in the middle, we have to balance the real hard reality is that we only have a certain amount of resources that we have to manage in order to continue to provide services.
And Mr. Campbell, and
Yeah.
saying that also,
Thank you.
I think that it's very important as these new buildings go online, that we're actually taking a good look at that now as we're going forward. Because when they go online, we got to make sure that we do have them services in place.
Agreed, agreed. And I think we talked about, systems. You hit the nail on the head earlier, Mr. Pinnabone. We were just talking about contract management. Right now, and how the clerk's office technically manages all the contracts because the council authorizes the contracts that come into the city for the most part, unless it's professional services. That collecting data, it goes across the board on also understanding parking issues. We can talk about anecdotally getting phone calls from our constituents, but are we measuring it? We can measure 911 calls for fire and police, but we need to do a better job of measuring everything. That way we can then justify allocating additional resources when we need them.
That's what we're capturing.
Yes. So I just wanted to add that. I know we're running late here, and we wanted to get.
Sounds good, Louis. Thank you.
Okay, we wanted to get the fire chief on board here.
Okay.
And so I'll finish up by traffic, but just so you know, Councilman, just one thing I forgot to mention was that we are hiring next year for a full-time. Like most of the PEOs are part-time. We will have a full-time with flexible schedule so that as I get complaints or you have issues like that, I'll be able to move that individual as a full-time PEO to take care of those specific needs. So that was one of the ways that we'll probably look to address those issues as well.
Actually, when we did that in the budget, we did increase the assumption on parking tickets. We looked at that individual chief. That's a good point. That's actually a big move in this budget.
Yep.
To have a full-time PEO.
Our traffic budget is, again, it was actually down about 1.78% and about $13,000. What we've done is we've been able to get grants for our LPRs that we've been purchasing for the city. The goal is to try to put kind of a dome over the city that we know and we can identify when crimes occur, who's moving and those types of things. So if we're looking for vehicles and all that, we can actually use this equipment. And so we're actually able to get grants. So that is actually, we're able to pull out some of the funding from there, which has allowed us to decrease our traffic budget as well. So there was really no changes. Most of the traffic budget goes to IPS and fees for transactions and things to that effect. And then the management of the parking and the traffic division as a whole. And our proposed overall police budget, again, with that large $805,000 decrease in the actual general, is about 5.62% decrease, again, based primarily with the EIT moving away.
Any other questions for the chief at this moment? Seeing none, thank you, chief. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Everybody have a great Thanksgiving.
You too. Happy
Chief to
Thanksgiving.
chief, fire department.
It's supposed to rain all day Thanksgiving.
It won't be no mud.
Makes for a long, cold morning.
It does. It does. Be safe, chief.
Okay, so we'll start off, brief statement ahead of time. I'd like to say good evening to all of our esteemed members of City Council. I want to thank you all for your support of the Easton Fire Department with our apparatus purchases, upgrades for our tools and equipment, and our technological upgrades that allow us to assist the citizens and the visitors in their times of need. It is greatly appreciated. We look forward to your continued support with our fire stations as that project moves forward. I want to let you know some things about your firefighters before we review the budget. And there are a few careers where there is absolutely no guarantee that you will return home to your loved ones when you walk out the door in the morning. And this is one of them. When your firefighters raised their hands, they swore an oath to protect the citizens of Easton. They accepted the greatest responsibility and duty that can be asked of anyone. And that is the fact that they may lose their life in the service of their community. They ignore the risks and dangers they face, time lost with family during holidays, birthdays, sporting events, and other milestones. Despite that adversity, they show up every day and answer the call regardless of time, weather, or situation faced. They are jacks of all trades, and they will do their best to find a solution whatever issues they face. They train for many situations other than fires, such as rope rescue, vehicle rescue, water rescue, hazardous material incidents like the one they had in Palmer Township yesterday that we had responded to, and EMS calls in order to meet all of your needs. Your firefighters serve the community in many ways, and not always while on duty. They participate in fundraisers. They raise money for people with cancer. No Shave November is currently ongoing for prostate cancer. They've donated time, money to assist people that are struggling, and they have paid for vehicle repairs, food, clothing. They've held motorcycle runs, Coats for Kids, donated Christmas trees. The 9/11 memorial we have in Center Square every year on September 11th, and they even assisted the members of Local 447 during the COVID layoffs, and that list goes on. They do not do these things for the accolades, and you may never hear about them, but they do it because they care. So I hope all of you are as proud of your firefighters as I am, and their dedication to the citizens and the visitors of Easton. So, that being said,
Thank you.
do you have any questions for the budget? And without being a comedian, my budget is going to be very similar to what the chief presented to you with the loss of the EIT. There's the $800,000 and change. For the slight increases we have is about $300,000. That's attributed to, like the chief said, personnel costs that reflect healthcare, which is a significant increase this year. The contract is in negotiations at this point, so we don't know what those raises will look like over the course of time or what that duration will be, 4-year, 3-year, whatever that case is. So most of my increases are for durable goods, turnout gear, tools and equipment, hoses, those kind of things. Does anybody have any questions?
Let me, one more, go ahead.
What is SCBA?
SCBA, they're the breathing apparatus.
Okay, thank you.
I do want to add one item that they're in the capital budget, which is the 151 budget. You do have increases in there for fire. So while the operating budget, which is the 101 budget, is exactly as the chief just explained, in the 151 budget, I do want to note the following, because I think they're important. There's about $2 million in capital that's going to be spent in 2025. 1.9 million of which is going to go towards vehicle purchases. But then the balance, there's some miscellaneous items, but I want to also note that there's radio equipment of $50,000. That's an important highlight. So I do want to note that while the 101 operating budget stayed flat, so to speak, there's, and as the chief noted, there's $2 million in the capital budget that's going towards the department. The other slight note that I do want to make, while we are in negotiations for fire and police, this budget does include a small increase. We put it in the budget, a 2% increase for fire and police, just so we could have something in the budget. If we go to arbitration and an arbitrator rules, at least it'll be 2%, so we won't start at 0. If it's higher than 2%, we would have to make up the difference.
Mr. Campos, I'm
Yeah.
sorry to cut you off.
Yes.
If in fact that goes over the time we pass the budget and the amount changes, is that an opportunity, or will that be the opportunity to reopen the 2025 budget?
100%. Act 111 arbitration is binding.
Okay.
So whatever the arbitrator rules, we would
Then
have
we have to go with it.
we would have to come here, open up the budget, and present you the document, which you would ceremoniously approve. But we would then submit a budget amendment if it needed one.
Okay. Thank you for clarity.
Yeah.
Any questions? Well,
Chief.
that was actually shorter than the police chief.
Do you have something, Mr. Penamone?
You look tall.
Chief.
I do.
Chief. Mr. Councilman Penamone has a question for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Brown. Chief, my question to you is similar to my question to Chief Scalzo, not so much with the increased in bodies, but, the new buildings. Marquee is very high, a lot of wood. Some of these other buildings that are, coming online. I know you saw the drawings of the confluence. You've already been in the watermark, I'm sure. Are you seeing any unique challenges that you haven't had to worry about in the past? I know the Alpha building is higher than the Marquee, but in terms of the layout and materials, are you seeing anything different than what you guys are used to seeing in the city, and are we equipped to deal with anything new that you're seeing?
Well, let's answer the first part of that. Most of the new construction we have now is what's called podium construction, where the first two floors are of masonry and steel, and everything above that is wood. A lot of that happens to be lightweight truss construction, and that is hazardous to firefighters. Whether the building is sprinklered or not, the one factor that you cannot take out of whatever you engineer into a building is the human factor. And case in point is, if you are familiar with the city of Bethlehem, where they had the Boyd Theater and they had a new building construction there, they just had a fire in that building the other day. So we are going to be faced with some challenges. I can tell you for a fact that you cannot do more with less, and with the increase in population and buildings, your best bet is to plan for an increase in personnel.
And Chief, and saying that, Chief, as I said,
Hold
Chief
on,
Scalzo,
Brown, if I got, just to ask him to follow up in personnel, thank you. What about equipment? The equipment that we've been using, that we depend on, is that adequate, or do we have to start looking at different types of equipment for these newer buildings, or what we have is good?
So the equipment stock, we're upgrading that as we go along. We have the study from Mike Wilbur with the recommended times for replacement of equipment. I think we're pretty good on that. We've been following that fairly closely. The manpower is going to be the issue in order to attack these fires because of the height and the actual type of construction.
Thank you, Chief. Last question, I promise.
Hey, hold on a second, Mr. Spinone, before we move on. I wanted to make sure that we are starting, as I asked the Chief before, that we are capturing these numbers as we go forward. And what I mean by that, as these buildings start to come online, we looking forward, fast forward, we need to capture what they are so that we know as far as manpower, as Councilman Pentamone said, and equipment and all these other things are going to come.
Yep. So we can also look at our staffing models and look to change some of those to reduce some of the wear and tear on the apparatus as well.
Thank you. Mr. Pentamone?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Just a quick question for my own edification. Chief, if there's a big fire on 3rd Street, obviously our guys are responding first. What is the estimated time of arrival for Palmer, Bethlehem Township, and Forks, if those are our primary backups to 3rd Street and Easton?
Well, they're all a toss-up, to be honest with you, because they're all volunteer firefighters. So by the time they get the alert, they respond to their station, they man their apparatus and respond here. That's an unknown.
But our first is Wilson, right?
Wilson is our first, but they only typically staff 2 people. So we'll get whatever resource we ask for, whether it be the engine or the ladder, but just know that it's 2 people. The fire chief will also come over to help in a command role, but so 3 people.
Thank you, Chief. Lewis, and Mayor, I mean, obviously, we're at, I don't think I'm looking or have enough information to do anything in this budget. I don't think any of us do, but I would like to spend the next, I know the mayor starts working on his budget in June. I think it's worth taking a look and doing some studies and maybe forming a committee with Councilman Ruggles' lead as the chair of public safety to see if there's a need to make any increases in the 26 budget. I know the Marquee is going to start renting in spring of 25, if I'm not mistaken. So, that's a few months away. I'd like to start looking at it in preparation of next year's budget for first responders, instead of waiting till the last minute, if it's okay.
The other consideration we also have to take is fire inspections.
That's true. That's manpower too. You have what? 2 people that are certified?
We have several that are certified, but we are not currently doing them. They were transferred to codes
Okay.
when Terry Folk was here.
We need to really look at that again.
Yes.
Any other questions, Councilman Penabone?
Thank you all.
Any other questions from the council? Chief?
All right. Thank you all for your
Thank you.
support.
Happy
Again, we
holiday to you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
You too,
Be a
thank you.
turkey, not a chicken. Okay. With that being said, I'm going to close the budget hearing. Have a great evening and a wonderful Thanksgiving.
You too. Thank you.
Give me a ticket, Frankie.
Listen, $35 your cost.
I'm older than that.
Have a good night, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Goodbye.
So you can see